And so I tell them, okay, well, the first thing we need to do is come up with a goal, right? So let's talk about your goals. And so I had a client and she told me, my goal is I want to make, 1.2 million in revenue. I've been trying to do this for 4 years. And I said, great. So then I went with her.
Uncommon Leaders, welcome back. This is the Uncommon Leader Podcast. I'm your host, John Gallagher, and I've got a fantastic guest for you today. Maritza Davila, she's here as the founder, if you will, Optimize 360, and I'm looking forward to our energetic conversation today. We've already had so many good things we chatted about before we even hit the record button on this conversation that I'm hopeful that we haven't used all of them up yet. Maritza is going to bring an energy that you're looking for to ultimately encourage and equip you to be the leader that you were called to be. Maritza, welcome to the Uncommon Leader Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. I'm really looking forward to it. Look, I want to jump right in. As I did some research and getting ready for the conversation, I came across something on your Twitter profile that said you retired at 23 years old. Now, help me understand this. You're not retired. You're still working. What is going on, and what does that mean for you to retire at 23?
Of course. So retirement to me means that you don't have to continue working. Doesn't mean you don't work, just have to work. And so I am very grateful that my husband and we bought a real estate investment at the age of 23 that gives me rental income. And it's not passive income, as people say, but it is as passive, I think, as you can get, and at least from my experience. And I really haven't had to work. I have worked, obviously. I'm still working, but I've had, that has given me the opportunity to be able to work on things that I really love and I'm passionate about, and not just go to a job and just pay the bills. And so that's what I mean by retired at 23.
I love that. I've had a friend of mine say he was reinventing himself after he, quote, retired. I've seen a book that's out there that says, let's retire the word retirement. And I love how you talk about in terms of being able to do, in essence, what you love to do. Many people, I don't believe this statement, many people say, if you can find and do what you love to do, you won't work a day in your life. But I actually see that the other way, in that if you find something you love to do, you have a passion for it, you have a gift for it, and you have a market for it, you can get paid for it, then you'll work as much as you need to make a difference inside of that space. So I'm encouraged then. Good. I know you weren't done at 23. No. And I know, let's jump into where you were. You just had a birthday post on your Instagram that talked about SPUR. And I love some of these descriptions where you start out that you are a business consultant, but you also say things like, you're not a picky eater. You say things like you want to live life boldly.
I do.
But the other side, one of the ones that I was really intrigued by, is that you're never afraid of public speaking. And so I've often read that public speaking is like the number one fear that individuals have and the toughest thing to overcome. What does that mean for you to never be afraid of public speaking, to be able to chat like this in front of a group and really share?
Yeah, so I say that because, like you mentioned, most people are afraid of public speaking, but I've never felt that way because even when I was a kid, or even like in high school and college, most people, when you have like a group presentation, there always had to be one person that had to go up, and I was always like happy to volunteer, and never had a problem. I mean, I've translated in my church, in public in front of a bunch of people, and it's never like, I'm not really worried about people may think of me, which is, I think, what it really ties down to is the fear of public speaking. I am more interested or thinking about how possibly what I say could affect them and could impact them. And so I'm not really thinking about myself when I put myself out and do public speaking, which I think is what mostly ends up happening, right? And so that's why I say that, because all my life I've never been afraid of it. So it comes very naturally to me, and it's just something I'm happy to do when the opportunity presents itself.
So when someone says that to you, even as a consultant, I'm afraid to do public speaking, like what's one of the tips for you that you give them? Like, this is what I do to be not afraid of public speaking? What is it?
I just think about the audience. And so as long as I know exactly what I'm going to talk about. And so there's a specific topic. And so I have to I'm thinking about the people that are there and how this topic could affect them in their personal life, could affect them in their business, could take them to make a decision and really lead them into a better place. And when they came in, they don't leave the same as they came out. And so my advice to anyone that is afraid of public speaking is forget about yourself and just completely think about the audience and what you can possibly say to them that will lead them into action, lead them into results. And I mean, it's very fulfilling when after you speak, people tell you, wow, this was amazing. I learned a lot. That was very inspiring. I actually made this decision and turned into this result in my business or my person. So that's more fulfilling than the fear of it.
I love that. And the other thing I hear and what you're saying with regards to advice is speaking on something that you know, speaking on something you have knowledge of or you're good at, whatever that is. A lot of times folks will try to speak on something that they aren't comfortable with, and that shows right outside their public speaking when they aren't comfortable with the topic. So know who you're speaking with and also know the topic that you're speaking about and try to stay focused on that. Love that. All right, folks, listen in, because I know that even I have a few years on you, several years on you, a couple decades. I know that I get nervous still a little bit when I'm doing public presentation, but if I know the topic and I understand who I'm speaking to and the impact that I want to have, that's powerful. And you even touched on it. The third thing, what makes it better for us speakers is the feedback that we get as well. You know, when somebody tells us that it made a difference, it certainly can be very encouraging for us to continue to do that. So I appreciate that. All right, let's learn a little bit, Maritza, about your business now then. Business is another one of those I ams that you really have of who you are. And tell me a little bit about Optimize 360. What do you do business with Optimize 360?
Yeah. So I help business owners with a team to grow their business predictably. That's what I'm doing. And so the main pattern that I see, or the main problem that I see in multiple business owners, is that even though they're successful in their business because there's momentum, things are moving, it starts becoming very chaotic. And so they may not have the most efficient systems or the most efficient resources to really optimize, like the name indicates, right? To the best potential, to their best ability. So they have people, they have money, and they have time, but they're not utilizing them so that they can, basically get the most potential out of them. And so I've seen that in many business owners. I've helped different types of business owners over the years. And business is something that I love. And I love learning about business. I know that some men or that I like clients that I've had, they tell me, I can't speak to my wife about my business because it's just not a topic that they're interested in. But I've all my life been interested in business for as long as I can remember. And it is constantly a topic of conversation with me and my husband. So it's just great that I could make it into a business for myself.
No, I appreciate that because, and again, you and I have a common organization we work with, Brand Builders Group, and their CEO, Rory Vaden, the most powerful quote that I've heard him say before is that you are most powerfully positioned to help the person that you once were. And it sounds like, again, you had a passion for that in your past. Tell me a story from your past that really encouraged or inspired you then to start a business and say you wanted to help others do that.
Yeah, 100%. So this was really the turning point for me when I realized my natural skill set and ability to help business owners. Because as you know, when you are trying new things, there's a lot of self-doubt and things that come in to your mind of, can I even do this? Like, am I even, like you said, positioned? Am I even equipped for this to be able to help these people? But I had worked with several business owners, but it wasn't until I worked with this specific business owner where he wanted me to essentially be his right hand for about 3 businesses that he had. He was in real estate investing and he had a coaching company and a nonprofit. And so he just asked me, look, I have this great vision that I want to do, but I need someone to help me execute on this. And so, at that point, I said, okay. And so I joined him, and I was only there for about 3.5 months. And I worked with him on marketing, on optimizing like his funnel. I worked with him on just the operation side of the business and making it really streamlined, making things automated. And so all about like efficiency, as we were talking about. And I was able to see how in those short 3.5 months, we were able to 5x the revenue of me. And so after that, engagement, I had to sit back and think to myself, you have a natural skill set for this. Like, it's not something that you have to study, even though I did study and I do have my MBA and I continue to study about business, no matter like any books, any, course. I've done so many courses, so many things, but because I'm interested in it, because it's a topic of that I find to be challenging. And I think because it's challenging, it's why I actually love it. And so I just sat back from that experience and saw, my natural ability to be able to see things that maybe visionaries typically don't, or founders typically don't see, and to be able to go in there and just execute. And so that's when I realized, okay, I can do this, and started to channel that even more.
5X in 3.5 months. That's pretty powerful in terms of understanding and very impactful. Thank you for sharing that story. What was the biggest barrier that you saw that he was going through in terms of trying to, in essence, grow the business? And at least he was sharp enough to recognize he needed help. That was the first start. But when you got in there and you had that success, what was the biggest thing you found that was getting in the way?
Streamlining his marketing and his sales was really big. And so, he would do a ton of content, but it wasn't pinpointing them anywhere. And so it really just, we, worked and came up with a challenge where, he funneled all his content into a specific challenge for people to go into. And then before, he would do one-on-one sales with a lot of the, with a lot of the leads. And I told him, why don't you just sell on the webinar or on the challenge and just streamline it? Most people are not going to want it, but if you get, 3% of the people that sign up to do it, it's going to lead to a lot more sales. And so he did that, and it worked out.
And I love that the numbers are important. There's no doubt about it. In some of your literature and some of the things that you've done, I've seen you say things a couple times. Metrics are just feedback. What does that mean? Tell me what you mean by metrics or just feedback.
Yeah, I love talking about what I call momentum metrics. And so it's what it means. It's meant to build momentum, more momentum into your business. So typically I see that a lot of my clients have no data. So they're not looking at data at all to make decisions. And so I tell them, okay, well, the first thing we need to do is come up with a goal, right? So let's talk about your goals. And so I had a client, and she told me, my goal is I want to make, 1.2 million in revenue. I've been trying to do this for 4 years and I haven't been able to hit it. And I said, great. So then I went with her. I said, how many weeks do you work? Right? Because the companies don't all work 52 weeks a year. And so she told me, and then I said, okay, let's make this annual goal into a weekly goal that you have to hit. And so we did this in Q2, and I made essentially a scorecard for her, where weekly she had to put in billable hours and product sales and how many people she was reaching out to, things like that. And her quarterly goal was $290,000 for product sales. And with her tracking weekly these metrics by just 2 months, because she hadn't recorded the last month yet, she had already hit 391,000. And so there's a study that I found that shows that if you track your goals weekly, your annual goals weekly, you are twice as likely to hit them. Wow. So I just implement that for my clients and show them the urgency and the importance of it, because most people don't track anything. And so when you start tracking, then and you actually hold people accountable to those metrics, then you're going to see a big difference in the growth of your business.
It's certainly something as you look at that annual goal, and that can come in resolutions that we have and things that we want to do from a leadership development standpoint, whatever those are. I love thinking about breaking that down into both weekly goals as part of that, but also the second component you talked about are what are the behaviors that I must do as well. So you talked about how many people that I'm reaching out to. So it's not just the number in terms of revenue, but it's also those behaviors or those disciplines that come into play. And I did my homework. You said you can't excel at what you don't prioritize.
Very
So
true.
tell me a little bit about that and what that means. Like what gets in the way of folks prioritizing and doing the right things?
Well, typically business owners that I work with are operators. And so they're dealing with the day to day. There's a ton of distractions day to day and just running your business. And so what ends up happening is that there is no priority because your priority is just, putting out the fires and making sure things are running. Doesn't mean they're running well, but they're running, And so I like to tell them you can't excel what you don't prioritize. So if you don't prioritize your goals, you don't prioritize meeting those goals, then you won't hit them, right? You won't excel at that. And so that's typically what I mean when I say that.
Love that. Now, Uncommon leaders, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I believe in doing business with people you like and trust and not just a company name. That's why a strong personal brand is essential, whether you're an entrepreneur or a leader within a company. Brand Builders Group, the folks who have been helping me refine my own personal brand, are offering a free consultation call with one of their expert brand strategists. They'll help you identify your uniqueness, craft a compelling story, and develop a step-by-step plan to elevate your impact. So head on over to 𝐂𝐡𝐞.com/BBG, as in Brand Builders Group, to schedule your free call and take the first step toward building a personal brand that gets you noticed for all the right reasons. That's 𝐂𝐡𝐞.com/BBG. Now, let's get back to the episode. Many times as coaches, as consultants, and we're advising and encouraging others to follow these disciplines, we have to know that we have to do those ourselves as well to be successful. What's a unique habit or two that you have that helps you to continue to grow, like you mentioned, that's very important for you?
Yeah. So, really it comes back to metrics and data. I actually tend to be the type of person that will make decisions based off my gut. Like if it doesn't feel good, that's typically what I would do. It wasn't until I started implementing data that I said, okay, I have more of an analysis. So I see there's like a cycle that we typically go to once we start tracking in our business. And so I call it like the track loop. And so T is like target, what's your goal, right? Then you go into record, you're recording the results week over week. And then A is analyze. And so that's what I typically do is I analyze what I have done with the data to see, is this working? Is this not working? Because if this is not working, I don't need to waste more time doing this. It is not giving me any results. And then it goes to C, which would be correct, right? So we course correct over the week to see, or over the month or the quarter or the year to see what I'm doing is working well. How well is it working? Or it's not working. So then I'm going to stop doing this and now I'm going to focus my efforts on something that's more productive. And then K would just be keep the momentum, right? So we continually come up with new goals, right? I'm the type of person, and the clients I work with that are leaders, you're never satisfied with when you hit the one goal, right? You're always going to make the next one. And so you just continue doing that. And that's a practice that I have in my own life, my own business, where I always implement specific things that I want to hit and then track it and analyze it weekly to see if it's really working or not.
That's what I was going to ask. So weekly is the frequency in which you're trying to do that analysis. I might refer to it often to the list of the Uncommon Leader podcast as reflecting, taking a look at what's really happening. And then ultimately, as you said, course correcting, or, what do I need to keep doing, start doing, or stop doing that's right, working or not working. I love that intentional reflection. You mentioned you do that on a weekly basis. And I think that's probably about the right frequency as well. Not that it's, up to me. I think many leaders, they want to do that on an annual basis, and it's just not frequent enough in terms of doing the course correction. So I like how you said that. The other methodology that you've mentioned that I've read a little bit about is your GROW methodology as well. Tell me at a high level, what is this GROW methodology? Realize proprietary. You can share as much as you want to. And how would somebody get started utilizing a methodology like that?
Yeah. So the GROW methodology is guide, research, optimize, and win. And how you get started with the guide component, which is you really need to reflect and think, well, what is important to me in my business, right? What are my core values? What are my goals? What type of people do I want? How big of a business do I want? Because not everybody wants, $1 billion business. And how many people do I want to manage? How much of this time do I want to input? Am I building, what kind of a business am I building? Is it more of a lifestyle, or is this really a potential type of business where I really want to see how big I can make this thing? But then you also have to think, well, I have family. It's just realizing for yourself to guide yourself first as the owner of where is it that I want to go and how do I want to get there? Because that's all with core values, right? And I want to make sure I'm making decisions that are aligned with who I am, where I want to go, and who I want to become. And so that's really that guide portion of the GROW methodology, because if you don't have that, that's really foundational, where you could grow a huge business. And I've seen it many times where people will grow a very successful business from the outside, but they're very miserable on the inside. And so that's not what I want to do with my clients. And so that's how you start.
I love that. So and think about that guide and getting that going. You mentioned another term in there, core values, that are very important as well to understand. What are the core values that you live by, and how do you model those on a regular basis?
Yeah. So my core values is SPUR, SPR. So it would be S is for service. And so I love to be of service to anyone really, but I'm always on service. And then P is prioritizing progress. So I don't prioritize perfection. I prioritize progress. So as long as things are growing, then I'm happy. And then R is being reliable. And so a reliable partner, a reliable, in my marriage, reliable with my friends, reliable with my family, reliable with my clients. And so I like being someone that people can count on, where that if I say yes, I'll be there, I will be there. Right? It doesn't change. And I'm consistent with my behavior. And so those are kind of some of the ways that I model that service. I mean, I serve from my church, from when I cook and clean in my house, serving my husband, to when I serve my clients. I'm always looking to see maybe bonuses. I'm always thinking about them in the back of my head to see how can I better serve them, right? Whether it's with a new connection, prioritizing progress is in any area of my life. If I'm seeing, whether it's my health, my marriage, or my business, I'm trying to make things better at all times. And then, being reliable is just, I want to make sure I'm consistent with my behavior and really someone that people can count on.
I love that. The health, marriage, and business as the whole person leader that you're talking about, and utilizing that in prioritize. In terms of your health, what's a unique, again, another way that you prioritize your health that others can learn from? Because you're a young leader, but you're very ambitious as well. I can tell that you want to continuously grow and helping to grow others. How do you stay grounded and focus on your health as well?
So typically I reflect on what has worked the best for me, and I love to walk. And so whenever I'm feeling very stressed, which does happen, I just go on a walk, and I love walking with my dog, Sadie, and I'll walk. And so I'll typically do that in the evenings. And so I love walking. And then sometimes I also am specific on my carb intake. I've done some things with the foods that I eat, and I can feel a lot better when I'm not eating as many carbs. And so sometimes I don't do that always, but I'll do like sprints where for like a couple of months, I'm really, really focused on how many carbs I'm taking in. And I can see a difference, in my body and even my attention. So those are the two ways that I would say I focus on my health.
So movement, certainly. And you did. That was another descriptor that you'd use. You're a dog mom. Yes. And I saw pictures of folks. You should follow her on Instagram to see the pictures of her dog, Sadie, as well. Definitely involved in her life and in her business as well. But the other side of that is the nutrition. And I've often said that it's very difficult to out-exercise a bad diet. There's no doubt about that. So those seasons that you're in with regards to being able to recognize when you feel well or don't feel well based on what you eat is so powerful. Again, I just got back from a 3-day trip. That was my own personal development, but the food was phenomenal. And I recognized that if I try to eat the way I used to is not a good thing, because I enjoy food. It can be really bad. I love the desserts that they had and the pastries and all those things, but I also recognize how I feel if I overdo it. So learning to stop when it's just what you need for your nutrition is very important. Thanks for sharing that. as you go forward. I just have one more question. Then we're going to get a chance to learn a little bit more about you and how folks can get in contact with you. All the way up to mission for you and what's important for you is to build and edify leaders of leaders. Where did that come from, and what does that mean to you to edify leaders of leaders?
Yeah, where that came from, really, to me, it's just conviction of where God has been guiding me. And so I heard that term years ago, a leader of leaders. And it caught my attention a lot because I thought, if I can impact a leader of leaders, I actually can have a bigger impact than if I'm focused on individually, because I'm only one person. And so we all have limited time here on earth. So I'm thinking, okay, well, what's the best way for me to have the most impact? And I really think it's by impacting leaders of leaders, because then when you affect someone's leadership, which right, the Uncommon Leader podcast, of course. And so when you affect someone's leadership, it's going to affect the way they show up, not only in their business or their company, with the team that they have. It affects the way they are with their spouse. It affects the way they are with their children. It affects the way they are with their community and their family, because you start to become someone different. And so I really think that when you can help affect people's character and who they are internally and their behavior, it's much more impactful than even what I'm doing right now with businesses and growing and making it more profitable. And that's great. And I love doing that. But really, it's how can I make this business owner understand that they really affect the way that their employees show up when they go home from work? It's like when they are miserable, I mean, you go home from work and you're probably having fights with your spouse, right? So the way they show up is very important. Not only for let's make this business as profitable and as efficient as possible, but let's make sure that the people that we have within our circle are positively affected by us being in their lives. And so I think leadership has a lot to do with that. And so really I've just been defining it and refining my mission more as the days go by. And I just thought, I really want 100 leaders of leaders that I can affect. And even within that, kind of like 10, right? That I'm really involved in, because I think that nothing impactful happens on the surface. Everything is deep. And so when you can build deep relationships with people, you have more influence and impact over their lives.
Love that. Maritza, how can folks get in touch with you? I mentioned kind of your Instagram page and a couple of other. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you and learn more about you if they wanted to chat with you?
Yeah, well, I'm in a lot of the socials, but I'm most in LinkedIn or Instagram, and they could just look up my name and will find me, Maritza Davila. And then on my website is 𝐓𝐡360.co. And so that's opt, like opt-in, but 𝐓𝐡360.co. And you'll find more information about me there.
Excellent. I'll be sure to put the links in the show notes so that folks can get in touch with you. I'm sure they're going to want to. Okay, Maritza, one more question that I always send my guests through at the end of every podcast, and I give you the last word here. I'm going to give you a billboard. You can put it anywhere you want to. You want to put it in Naples or wherever you want to put it in terms of where you're from. You get to put any message that you want to on that billboard. What's the message that you put on that billboard, and why do you put it on there?
The message, I think, for me is a guiding principle that I live by, and it's live life boldly. And why? It's because we are in a culture where everyone is really focused on fear. I'm fearful, I'm anxious. I mean, even newer generations where they're even fearful to be in social settings. I mean, things that are happening now and how the culture is changing. And I really don't think that you can have a very fulfilling life if you don't do things that you're afraid of. And so I love to do things that I'm afraid of and I don't feel ready for, because on the other side of that, I become a more bolder person, become more courageous. And so I think that our world would benefit from people that live life boldly.
Live boldly. Maritza Davila, you've been a bold guest here on the Uncommon Leader podcast. I appreciate you sharing just a little bit of your story and adding value to the listeners. I wish you the best in the future. Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, Uncommon Leaders, I hope you enjoyed that conversation I just had with Maritza Davila. I was inspired by her message about using metrics to help us to get better and breaking them down from an annual goal into those weekly buckets that she talked about and understanding what habits we needed to go to. And it certainly was inspiring as she talked about the message of how she doesn't get fearful, if you will, during public speaking. I think I had something to learn from her, and I know you all did as well. Hey, if you enjoyed this conversation, I encourage you to share this with somebody else who you know needs to hear it. And I would encourage you also to think about, if you like the Uncommon Leader podcast, leave us a 5-star review so that we can get it in the hands of other people just like you. Until next time, go and grow champions.